horror fans. I'm Ghastly.
I'm Gruesome.
So a couple of quick housekeeping notes. So first off, we were planning to watch the Rings sequels, but when our friend was over to watch them, we kind of
got delayed
and ran out of time. We'll do them the next time he's up. And now that the entire world is shut down, to the outbreak of coronavirus.
If you've been living under a rock, there's a global pandemic that's been scourging across the entire world.
Civilized world. So it seemed fitting with this massive pandemic outbreak, shutting the entire world down, putting us both out of a job temporarily, canceling all travel plans, and making almost everything in all civilized parts of the world shutting down and causing mass panic.
Theaters down, movie theaters are down, bars are down, restaurants are down.
Businesses, Disney World shut down. You know when the last time Disney World shut down? 9/11. So, with all of this happening, it seemed fitting to watch 2010's Black Death. It was about another global pandemic that scared the crap out of everyone, made them start burning people for heresy and witches, kill all the cats. Granted, it had a death toll that took out a third to a half of Europe, whereas this one is, just scary flu?
It's scary flu for everyone who is not very old or immunocompromised. So
right.
Yes.
So anyway, about the movie itself. It was made in 2010. It was directed by Christopher Smith, who had previously directed Creep, Severance, and Triangle, none of which I've watched. But it stars Sean Bean.
It stars Sean Bean and Eddie Redmayne.
And Clarice Von Houten. Houghton? Houten.
I don't know. But, Sean Bean and Eddie Redmayne are the big names in that.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be really good. It's another example of cult horror. It's a more modern example of, not cult, good lord, folk horror. Similar to what we watched previously with The Wicker Man. Not the same quite kind of film, but the same genre.
That's very folk horror.
In the same idea that The Exorcist and Prophecy are both religious horror, but couldn't be more different films, both of which we'll get to eventually.
Yeah.
But without giving too much away, the basic idea of this movie is that there's this one village in England in 1348 that somehow isn't being affected by the plague. And a knight is dispatched to be like, okay, is it witches? Are they causing the plague? What's going on here? So yeah, I've been meaning to see this one for a while. I've heard it's very fun, in a dark horror kind of way, you know.
How thematically appropriate now that we're both stuck at home.
Oh god, the world's... it's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine.
I can't wait to look back on this and look at, the economic impact, the impact on individual businesses and companies.
Horrible. Just all bad.
I want to see the numbers.
As the meme lords are saying, though, the CEOs of toilet paper and hand sanitizer are rolling. Like goddamn duck right now.
People are panic buying like crazy.
Everything. If you're listening to this, stop buying out the stores. Other people need the stuff too, or the virus still spreads.
As a word of advice. As a word of advice,
for the, two people watching this.
Let's take the example of YouTuber Dr. Mike. Be cautious. Do not panic. Be aware. Be alert. Do not panic.
Be alert. America needs more alerts. Alright.
We need more testing kits. That's all we need.
We'll see you after the film, folks. And we're back. Alright, so...
That was good.
It was bleak. I mean, not only in tone and subject matter.
It changed a lot for me. It changed from each...
You weren't thrilled with it early on.
I'm still not thrilled with every part of it, but let's break it down, because it basically it changed for me in each part of it. At first, it felt to me like it was building really slow, and then all of a sudden we got thrown into the main plot of it, and then at the very end, I feel like it really wrapped up with a very solid piece.
It did, and honestly, what I was saying with the bleakness is it also, artistically, from a filmmaking standpoint, because sometimes a decision will be made to change the filtering of how a movie looks, just because they like the look.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, I'd argue that the way the movie was desaturated worked because, A, it made it feel very bleak and gritty, but also, the movie's called Black Death, and by desaturating everything, it makes everything that isn't the color black look really pale. And there were so many shots where there was a person in a black robe, or on a black horse, or something that was black in the foreground, and it brought out the color of this dark, oppressive, diseased-looking black against this pale, diseased, deathly-looking world and people.
It definitely sets a tone very well.
Oh, yeah.
I would say it reminded me of a bit, of The Wicker Man in its paganism and the whole cult thing.
It's the same subgenre of horror.
It builds in a similar way. It doesn't finish in a similar way.
Well, no, because it's not a ripoff of the movie any more than, and we haven't covered either of these movies, but The Rite isn't a ripoff of The Exorcist. It just deals with similar subject matter. And when you're treading similar ground, you're going to hit certain beats.
Yeah.
That have already been hit.
The beats in here are very similar.
So,
at least for the beginning.
So, yeah, the knights, there's the Christian knight and his group of torturers and inquisitors who are setting out to find this village that they think has a necromancer in it, keeping them from being hit by the plague, protecting them because they're worshipping paganism or Satan or something dark. And they bring with them a monk who's going for his own selfish reason that his secret girlfriend went back to her home village that was nearby this mysteriously protected village. She turns out to be dead in the woods, killed by robbers, at least he thinks, and the village is weirdly hospitable. And then they drug the Christian monks. Supposedly the witch who's running the place raises the girlfriend from the dead. And then they're like, yo, Christians, we're going to torture you to death if you don't renounce God. Except the one guy who does renounce God just gets hanged in the woods. So they were just going to kill them all anyway. And in a really disturbing but very compelling scene, we see the girlfriend supposedly get raised from the dead, and we see her in a cabin. And much like accounts of supposed real-world necromancy, it's not her. It's some horrible, unable to speak, mute, violent thing in her body that can't even look at her priest lover. But then later the witch, after the priest kills her, thinking that he's putting her at peace, the witch claims, yeah, no, she was never dead. I nursed her back to health, then drugged her to trick you, because that's just the kind of a person I am.
It's debatable whether that's a revelation or a lie.
It's left ambiguous. Well, much like the fact that the narration at the end, only one of the inquisitorial knights survives. The old mentor one. Him and the priest survive at the end. And he claims that the village soon succumbed to plague, that they were never protected by the witch, just that they were super remote. But it's worth noting that the witch fled the village when the knights tried to kill her. So it's possible that she was protecting them. It's deliberately left ambiguous. Much like at the end.
Well, let's get to the end later. Let's
There's
because
so much to deal with.
Because I want to say the end for the end.
Yes.
In the build up to this, I think a lot of the characters, I think at least 3 characters are set up very well.
The priest, our main character, our hero,
Eddie Redmayne,
played by
Eddie Redmayne.
Yep. Sean Bean's character, who's a little more stoic than you would have liked, you mentioned, but who is a valid character nonetheless.
Yes. A lot of other characters are built up, and it's like the Hobbit thing.
Where we get just enough to know that, okay, you're a person, but we don't know you. Yeah. We know about you.
It's a lot of the Band of Brothers thing. Like, just a bunch of hodgepodge of, like...
Although the older guy, I don't know who played him. I'm going to look this up. But the older guy, the surviving knight, he was well-developed. Enough to justify him surviving.
Yeah, very much an ensemble, but even didn't gel enough for me to feel like a cohesive ensemble. There's...
Well, like there was a half dozen of them.
Like, there's some side knights that stuck out, that they chose, that they gave some interesting traits. The bald one who's a Christian, but
a torturer. The torturer, yeah, who they gave some traits to. And there's that bit where they're threatening to torture him to death, and Sean Bean's character, Ulrich the Knight, Sir Ulrich, says, "I'll die first for Christ," and then the torturer goes, "I'll fight you to be the one who dies first."
The one who's making out with the woman at the party, and then tries to renounce, and then gets hanged.
Yeah. Tries to renounce God. And you knew it was going to be him if one of them was. It's John Lynch.
This also
played Wulfstan, the surviving knight.
This also reminded me slightly of Silence, but only because of its...
The pagans persecuting the Christians sort of thing. Yeah, Silence, the Martin Scorsese movie. Although Silence was a more religious film because while Silence did have some critiques of missionary work, this one does leave it ambiguous whether the Christians are right about their God and God's fury, or if they're just as blind and lost in this time of plague as everyone else.
I guess.
There's no explicit miracles any more than there is any explicit witchcraft. It's all left disturbingly ambiguous.
Because even all of the witchcraft is qualified by something.
Right, yeah. Sean Bean's character gets a darkly horrific victory against the pagan cult living in this isolated village, though, because since he deliberately calls out the witch who's leading them, or the self-proclaimed witch who's leading them.
Yes.
Whether or not she's a real witch is irrelevant, really. She is deliberately torturing people to get them to renounce Christ, and she is deliberately leading a pagan cult. But he calls her out and claims she's damned and all that, and so she has them, instead of crucifying and disemboweling him, she has him tied to two horses and have the horses stretch him to death, which was a thing that was done. But he pretends to be about to renounce Christ, has the John Redmayne character, the priest, what was his name? Osmond, the novice monk and priest. He has him come up to him and he says, "You did a good job. By the way, open my shirt." And he goes, "Yeah, you aren't going to escape death. The witch can't protect you." The shirt comes out, and we see that he has the boils and the leaking blood of plague. And he goes, "I'm death. I have the plague. You're all infected."
And you saw this coming.
Well, because as soon as he said...
I didn't know what they were leading up to.
Because he says... Because the witch accuses them of bringing death by virtue of the fact that they brought with implements of torture and weapons.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You're right, we do come with death." And I was like... Oh no, he's got the thing. They called this Black Death.
Okay, so that's
with the name of it, plus him saying we come with death. It's like we've never seen him out of his armor.
So that's what you noticed, okay.
And he was so smug about it. And as horrible as Black Death is, these people were torturing people to death for trying to find a necromancer. And I said to you back in college when we were talking about horror, that because of the real-life persecutions of so-called witches, who obviously weren't witches, just weird people or people who other people wanted their land,
yes,
that when that came to more forefront in pop culture, the witch as a horror monster started to fall out of favor and that they needed a renaissance.
Right.
And I think this sort of movie is one of the right ways to portray witches as horrific. Because even if we aren't given a fully sympathetic view of the Christian inquisitors, the witch is not a sympathetic character.
No.
You want her to die. And the fact that... Can we talk about the ending?
Yes, now we can.
The fact that in the end, it's possible and even likely that she gets away completely without any consequences other than losing her cult is infuriating.
I love it. I love it.
It's great and it's bleak, and the fact that it turns Osmond, the somewhat innocent priest, into a full-blown inquisitor, hell-bent on hunting her down, to the point where he tortures and burns more than one possibly innocent woman in his quest to find her. In fact, by the end of it, we're even showing him seeing her face in the faces of women who look nothing like her.
Yeah.
And burning them. And we get the old knight who survived saying he hopes he found peace, while we see him looking at the burning carcass of a witch, or an accused witch, and it's obvious this man's never going to know peace again. And it's such a wonderfully nihilistic, all-despising ending for a horror movie.
And yeah, that was what made this movie for me.
Like,
I think... Because not all of the elements of this movie added up for me. There's a lot of good stuff about this.
You complained about the handheld camera.
I complained about the handheld camera.
Blame Terminator.
The lack of focus on the ensemble, or even the way they gelled as an ensemble. Just because, from the Hobbit movies, you said we get even less from the books, and
we did. In the books, we only got to know three of the dwarves,
and that's fine.
Really well.
At least what The Hobbit does is it establishes that these characters all know each other and all trust each other. I didn't always get that sense.
I mean, they tried to do it with that. I mean, I'd say they did. I mean, they clearly more than one of them dies, and we get that scene where the old knight who survives is explaining to Priest Osmond who each of his fellow inquisitors are.
Yeah,
and it's sort of like
we get the mourning, we get that. It's still,
he does this, he's here for that, he's here for this reason. Yeah, it's a one-sentence character descriptor, and that's all we get for most of them. But
there's more of just them sitting together and being with each other.
That's true. This movie was very eager to get us to the creepy cult. On the flip side, though, even before we get to the creepy cult.
Yeah, it takes a while to get to the creepy cult, actually.
And it builds to it nicely. We get all those wonderfully revolting shots of the carcass after carcass after carcass being put in a shallow grave or burned because of plague.
Right.
We get that brief interlude where Osmond naively tries to save a woman who's been accused of cursing the well of her village.
Right.
And Sean Bean's character, Ulrich, takes her aside as if he's going to free her. And then stabs her in the throat and explains to Osmond that, hey, if I'd freed her, the mob would have just hunted her down and burned her again. I gave her a painless death. Best we could do.
Yeah. But,
which is... Oh, wow. That sets the bleak tone right there. Even more than the shots of all the dead plague victims.
Yeah.
And those creepy shots of the aesthetic plague doctors.
Oh, my God. Anyway, back to the ending. I think it really sets in place where this movie wanted to go. I think because it's obvious when they have a standout idea in this movie.
And I think
it's obvious what beats they really wanted to hit.
I get why people praised the writing for this, because I'd never seen this one before, but I had heard people praise the writing in it.
Yeah.
And at first, I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was a solid movie, but it wasn't doing anything particularly that I hadn't seen elsewhere. But then with that ending, a lesser movie would have ended with Osmond being led back into the monastery with that creepy shot of him and the Father Superior walking into the smoke and mist with the ominous looming cross.
Yeah.
With the implication that, we don't need to care for him. He's back with God now, and his 1,000-yard stare of he'll never be okay again. That's a creepy enough ending of, doesn't matter that he's back with God, he's been forever traumatized by what he's done. And what he's seen.
Mm-hmm.
But then showing us an epilogue of how that changed him and warped him into something monstrous not only drives the horror home, but is a realistic take on how that would happen to a person.
I wasn't even thinking that. I was thinking a lesser movie would have had him catch her.
That too.
That's the first part I would have stopped at is... A lesser movie would have had him catch her. A lesser movie would have stopped at the cross thing.
H.P. Lovecraft said that the greatest and oldest fear is the fear of the unknown. And with this movie, it's not so much the unknown. We know what's scary. Witches, black magic, torture, and the plague. but it's the ambiguity. And you know what I've just realized? This is just occurring to me now. Back in 1348, they didn't know what caused the plague. They didn't know what medicine was. They didn't know how to treat it. It all seemed weird and impossible to fully understand.
Yeah.
The movie makes us feel that way. It's impossible to say with certainty if she was a witch, or if he ever caught the real witch, or if his girlfriend was drugged or resurrected. It's impossible to say for sure. You can only make the decision that makes you feel the best and hope you were right.
And even...
That's what the plague was. That's what the Black Death was to all of Europe.
Oh.
Oof.
Anyway, Eddie Redmayne really made this movie for me. I adore him in all of his work.
It's a good... they picked the right protagonist. I said during the movie, it's rarer than it should be that the protagonist is the most interesting character in a film.
But he
really was.
He tears up scenes when he's in it. He's great. Anyway.
You buy his grief and his confusion and his moral dilemmas and his rage at the end. That before he snaps in the epilogue, when he's trying to kill the witch at first, it's this hot, sobbing, hysterical rage. And at the end, when he's an inquisitor, it's this cold, impartial rage where he barely speaks, and when he does, there's no inflection in his voice. He's just a hollow shell of a man.
Yeah.
He's just a machine dedicated to trying to catch this woman.
He's barely even gesturing at the people he's killing.
He's nodding almost, like, yeah, her. And you almost think that in his heart he knows he's never going to find her. He just needs to keep killing in the hope that eventually he'll get her. If I just kill enough, one of them's bound to be her. Isn't that the Inquisition summed up?
Amazing.
Wow. All right. No.
Anyway, not a perfect movie, but I'd give it about 4 leeches out of 5.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
I'll give it a good 4 leeches out of 5. Let's go.
Good. Excellent. So that was Black Death. I'm not gonna lie. I have no idea what we're gonna watch next time. We're gonna maybe Pandemic. We'll find something fun.
Yeah.
Maybe another.
We're a little bit confused and living day to day here. So
Dazed and confused.
I mean, I guess
It's a reference.
Jesus Christ, we both are out of work and we don't know what's happening next. So we'll hope you're all right. We'll hope you're staying safe. Don't touch each other. Definitely don't lick each other. Definitely don't hug each other. Stay away from each other.
Were people licking each other before the outbreak?
Maybe.
That's why we got an outbreak.
Yeah. Anyway.
I have been ghastly.
I have been gruesome. Stay safe, stay healthy, everyone.
Burn the bodies.